Good day, guitar fellows, and welcome to another episode of Dr. Zerner's Guitar Lab. Today we are talking about why your hands struggle to play the guitar and how to position them for efficient and pain-free playing. So let's get started. I see that many guitar players struggle to find a proper way to position their hands on the guitar, and most of the time I see people trying to play very complex stuff using blues grip, which is quite inappropriate because this position is designed for a completely different type of playing. It's optimal for string bending and to have a serious strong grip here, while you're minimizing the length of the finger, and therefore the way that you press the string is no longer that precise, but it becomes a little bit more messy. Of course, this is something that suits very well such types of music like blues, but when you try to play something that's more technical, you actually need precision, and to achieve that precision you actually need to press in a certain way, and this grip won't help you. Another thing that I see quite often is someone trying to mimic a classical guitar position and exaggerating it quite a lot. And in such a way, they actually doing some very strange bend here in the wrist, which is causing a lot of trouble because it puts tendons under a lot of stress, and this position is not designed for playing the electric guitar, mainly because of its shape, its type of neck, and the way it's positioned, because the classical guitar usually sits more like this, and when you put your guitar like that, you already don't bend your wrist like that. So this feels natural when you play classical guitar, but when you start shredding and trying to do the same thing, you're only causing troubles. And another thing regarding to this position is that many people are trying to play like that and actually move their fingers like that, not like that. And this is completely not efficient way. The best way to play is when your fingers move like this. Another thing is how you actually behave with your picking hand, because there are many different genres and they require different articulations, and therefore you need a different type of grip, a different type of position, and you can't actually play every genre with the same hand position. And this is why the best way to go is to figure out which is the style of playing that you will play the most and adjust your hand accordingly. First of all, there are several things that apply to every kind of genre that you're going to play, and these are: keep your hands loose. Playing with tight hands won't take you anywhere. It makes everything very difficult and inefficient, and you really struggle to play. The next thing is, don't do excessive movements. I know that waving fingers like that and doing all kinds of cinematic movements may look very cool on a music video, but in real life it's very inefficient way to play. When you need to move your finger from here to here, for example, the best way to do that is to go straight forward to the next note. But when you start waving your fingers, actually you're increasing distance like 10 centimeters or so, and this is completely not efficient way to do that. First, it's slow, and second, it requires more effort. So playing like this won't take you anywhere. Rotary wrist movements. This is actually the most efficient way to play here, since these are the muscles that are designed for things that are most common type of movements during your day. No matter if you spread butter on a bread or you open a jar or bottle or something like that, you always do this type of movement. So this is something that's very natural to the hand, and this is why it's the best way to play, using the same type of movement. Please don't play from the elbow like that. because this is only getting you in trouble. You're building up tension here, and if you do it long enough, you're even going to get a nice injury, and this is actually not nice at all. You can trust me on that. Another thing that I see that a lot of people actually do is pressing their wrist on the guitar like that, and then trying to pick very fast. And the only thing that you can achieve using these methodics is to put a lot of stress here on the tendons, and at a certain point you will get injury. Another thing that it's very good for you to avoid is pressing your arm very tightly here on the edge of the guitar, because this will cause damage here on the ulnar nerve, and this leads to all kinds of nasty problems that you better avoid. Another problem that I see quite often in guitar players is that they hold the pick way too tightly, and they cause constant tension here, and this will cause trouble, so you better avoid it. Everything that you need to do is just hold the pick tight enough that you don't drop it. That's completely enough. So let's get a little bit more specific. Say that you want to play some metal riff like that. With this type of playing, you need a very tight and good articulation here, especially when it comes to downstrokes, because these riffs usually use predominantly downstrokes for accents and get this tight feeling. Therefore, the trajectory of the pick actually is a little bit like that, in this direction, not parallel to the strings like you would do if you play some technical solos and whatever you decide to play that's not heavy metal riffs. And this is why the pick slanting is slightly different. It's not like you would usually play a scale, but it needs to be a little bit like that to achieve this typical heavy, tight rhythm. Another style of playing that is quite similar to that is actually doing some shred stuff, and since there you actually need sweep pickings and different kinds of stuff, you actually can't utilize the same type of pick slanting as you would do with rhythm guitar playing. Therefore, you need a little bit more neutral position, and then you do the pick slanting here depending on the situation. Like if you play an arpeggio, you can see that the pick is going up and down, and the slanting is changing all the time. This is the way that you can play such things more efficiently. Or if you play some scales, you will need a very neutral type of pick slanting, which is pretty much zero position. Another type of playing that you might encounter is actually when you play some funk metal stuff like Rage Against the Machine or something. This is where you need a different type of articulation, like and if you try to play such thing with the heavy metal hand position, you will get this. And it doesn't really sound the same way. The articulation is slightly different, because when you play this funk metal stuff, you actually need the pick to slap a little bit on the strings, just like on the bass guitar. And if you pay attention to Tom Morello, for example, and he holds his guitar quite high, and his picking hand actually slaps on the strings when he plays riff, and this is how you get this very typical funky articulation while it's still some kind of metal. Another situation is when you start playing some jazzy stuff, which most likely you will play with some clean sound, and you will play some kind of chords and melodies and riffs like that, and you won't need any kind of muting. So the hand should hang in the air, resting just here, and you need to be very careful with this, because I mentioned earlier that pressing too hard here may damage your nerves, so be careful with that. Along with that, you need the pick tilting to be a little bit more parallel to the strings to achieve this very, very typical mellow sound of jazz players. You don't need this edgy scratch that you get when you play with angled pick, and that suits very well heavy metal and shred, but it's not very well sounding when you play jazz. There are several things that are quite important regarding your fretting hand. Since the fingers are not equal in length, we need to make them equal somehow in order to be able to play different kinds of stuff. And the best way to do that is to make what violinists actually do, and their position is like they're holding something. Your hand naturally grips like that and forms this very specific type of grip. And when we apply this grip to the neck, suddenly we have all of our fingers aligned, and we avoid very, very specific problem that I see that many people actually struggle with, that is that they try to align their fingers like that to be parallel to the frets, but this causes a lot of problems because it makes the hand to sit in a very unnatural position because it's twisted like that, and the natural position of the hand is more like this one. And the more you twist it in this direction, the more stress you're putting here, and this will lead to all kinds of problems and also building tension and difficulty playing all kinds of stuff. So when you position your hand like this, make sure that your fingers are slightly angled to ensure that you won't struggle with this problem. And finally, regarding the fretting hand, make sure that you always press as close as possible to the fret, because this is the spot where you can get the clearest sound with minimum effort, and therefore the whole process of playing becomes much easier. So that's everything for today's episode. If you like what I do, please consider supporting me on Patreon up here. Also, click like on my video, subscribe to my channel, click that bell button down there to get informed every time when I upload new video. See you next time, and remember, practice makes perfect.